Okay, maybe we'll cover a lot of ground today. And then because Bahamas, I want to learn Basi Lagani. Yeah, Basi Lagani is very, very tiff in Yonim. But even if we can't learn it appropriately, we'll learn it. We'll learn it to the we'll learn it to the best of our ability. So we'll leave 3 weeks. If we could finish this Maimer next week, then we'll have time left for Basi Lagani. So let's get going. Okay, so we're learning printing and we'll look at Vav, and we finished discussing that you have this idea of Podoh b'shalom nafshi mikravli, that there's a war, and the person is redeemed from the war in peace, and that this happens when you reveal a higher power, when you overwhelm the enemy with a power that he can't stand up to, which is b'derech klal called milamayla lamata, that the nefesh lekis comes milamayla and overwhelms the nefesh ba'amis with its ava to the Eibishter. And then you have P'diya b'shalom. Mashenk, when the nefesh lekis lowers itself to the nefesh ba'amis and tries to talk to it and work with it on its own level, so then you have a war. Then it's takanat b'shalom, it's not in peace. And we just finished learning that the Rebbe asks that l'chora it says Podoh b'shalom, that b'shalom is from the lashon of Beis shalom, that there's 2 ways of peace. One way of peace is milamayla lamata, and the second way of peace is milamata lamayla, which contradicts what we just said. And when you go milamata lamayla, it's not in a peaceful way. Right? If you're going to ask what's higher, what's greater, gee, as a kavod. How are you? So, in your honor, we'll make a very quick synopsis again of what we just said. We just started 2 minutes ago, so we'll start again. We're learning the Maimer Podoh b'shalom. The Maimer Podoh b'shalom, Shalom Aleichem. The Maimer Podoh b'shalom is based on the pasuk Podoh b'shalom nafshi. So we'll type the words Podoh b'shalom nafshi, that David HaMelech is saying that the Eibishter redeemed my soul in peace, mikravli, from the war that was being waged against me. Okay, and then he continues, Ki berabim hoyu imodi.
What is Yitrachla, right?
So let's first start. Let's first start. What was it b'pashtus, right? Literally, in the literal sense, this was the war that Avshalom, David HaMelech's son, waged against him. Avshalom rebelled against David HaMelech. David HaMelech had to flee Yerushalayim, and the majority of the army was on Avshalom's side, and there was a very tough situation for David HaMelech, and it looked like he may have lost. He was on the precipice of losing. David HaMelech, on his way fleeing Yerushalayim, met. Who was David HaMelech's friend? He had many, but there was one of them.
His best one was
No, that was but this is years later, after David HaMelech was already king for a while. Not the general, no, not the different one. So there was David HaMelech says, yeah, that you are a man who's on my level. You're my master, you're my teacher, and the one who has taught me knowledge. He's talking about Achitofel. Achitofel was one of the wisest men ever, and he was the Reish Sanhedrin, and he was a big man, and he sided with Avshalom. He joined Avshalom. When David HaMelech was fleeing Yerushalayim, he met one of his friends, I can't remember, and he was running. He heard about David HaMelech's trouble, so he was running to meet David HaMelech, and he wanted to join David HaMelech in fleeing Yerushalayim. David HaMelech told him, no, better go back to Yerushalayim, and over there's going to be Achitofel. You see to it that whatever advice Achitofel gives Avshalom, that Avshalom shouldn't take it. Because David HaMelech knew that if Achitofel advises Avshalom, he'll give him good advice, and that's going to be the end Rachman l'tzlan of David HaMelech, if Avshalom accepts it. And he told him, do whatever you could, just so that Achitofel's advice isn't accepted. And he went to Yerushalayim. I can't remember his name. This isn't the psukim. It's not. No, he was a general, like you were saying. Can't remember his name. No. So he went back to Yerushalayim, and Achitofel told Avshalom, go immediately, right now, as David HaMelech is fleeing, take your army, chase him down, and kill him. Because now he's at his weakest point. You're at your strongest. By the time David HaMelech gets home, he's already going to start regaining his strength. So David HaMelech's friend heard this, so he told Avshalom the exact opposite. He advised Avshalom. He said, why would you go and do this? You're okay. You have the capital. You're in a strong position. David the Melech, don't think it's so easy to get David the Melech. You know he's very strong. Don't underestimate him. And instead, wait till you could gather a massive army from all of the Shvatim. Don't go running hot-headed. You'll gather a massive army, then you'll go and you'll wage battle against David the Melech, and you'll be assured of victory. And Hitaka took his advice. He took David the Melech's friend's advice, and Kachave, he did it, and he lost. And he lost because David the Melech had a chance to regroup. This, when David HaMelech was saved from this war where he possibly had to flee, I think he even left Eretz Yisrael. I think he had to go into the land of Moab for a little bit. About Kopanim, when he won and he came back to Yerushalayim, so he sang this capital tune to the Eibishter. And he says, Podoh v'sholem nafshi mikravli, you redeemed my soul in peace from the terrible battle that was waged against me. So that's in Pshutim Shel Mikra. What is this talking about? This is talking about the war, the battle, like you were mentioned before, between the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamis. And Bechlal, the battle between Kedusha and Klippa, between the Elyon, and the Tachtin. The entire situation of war, because as we all know, this world, there's two realities, so to speak, in this world. And like we had in Tanya recently, right? Just like when Rivka Imenu, when she would pass by a yeshiva, so she would feel the baby kicking and very urgently trying to get out. And Lahavla, when she would pass a place of Avodah Zarah, she would feel the baby kicking very hard and trying to get out. She didn't understand this contradiction. Is it a baby that's interested in the yeshiva and in shul, or is it a baby that's interested in the opposite? So she went to Shem, and she asked Shem, and Shem told her that you have you have twins. There's two babies in there. And one is going to go this way, and one is going to go that way. From their birth, from the moment they're born, they're going to go in two different directions, and it's going to be a constant battle. Sorry, that's right, not going to get to this point, but they're going to be fighting against each other. There's never going to be a situation where they're both victorious and where they both own the place. Like the Alter Rebbe compares it to two kings that are fighting over a city. You can't have two kings over one city. There's going to be a battle between them. So it's the same thing in the entire universe, and from the Olam Yisrael all the way down to this world, and also within us personally, there's this battle between the Kedusha and Lahavdil Sitra Achra. And we have to deal with it. This is what our lives is all about. We're busy trying to wage this war and to win this battle. And in this Maimer, he explains that there's two ways that you can wage this battle. One way is where you go down to the level of the enemy and you have a conversation with him. And you explain to him, you tell him, hey, listen, your way of thinking is wrong. There's a better way. Come and join forces with me. Come and join my program. I'll show you a better way. And like this, you'll win the war. Okay, so if we take it to the story of the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamis, the Nefesh Elokis knows about Kedusha. Its reality, its world is Kedusha, is the Eibishter. That's all the Nefesh Elokis is aware of. And it sees the truth of the Eibishter in everything in the world. The Nefesh Bahamis is the complete opposite. The Nefesh Bahamis doesn't have any sense of a likus. It can't sense the Eibishter. And since our body in this world primarily is given life through the Nefesh Bahamis, so we also can't. We look around. We feel the emunah, the force of emunah in us is powerful. But to say that we could see the Eibishter the way our eyes could see physical things, it's not the case. Not until Mashiach comes. So the Nefesh Elokis is dealing with this Nefesh Bahamis that never heard of the Eibishter, never saw the Eibishter, has no awareness, and therefore has no interest in the Eibishter. It doesn't exist to him, Eibishter, to the Nefesh Bahamis. And the Nefesh Elokis comes to the Nefesh Bahamis and starts explaining to him and telling him, listen, you see there's a whole world around you, and you understand that the world didn't come from nowhere, and you understand that the one who created the world must be much greater than the world itself. And if you find the world to be so amazing and so fantastic and so interesting and so delicious, so to speak, you can imagine that the creator of the world, how much more so it's worthy to love him and to thank him for giving you life and for giving you everything that you have. And like this, the Nefesh Elokis slowly tries to work with the Nefesh Bahamis and to try to change his thinking. And then he starts working with his midas. He tries to explain to him it's not good to be so selfish. It's not good to be so self-centered. It's not, it's better to try and be more human, not to be so animalistic. And like this, the Nefesh Elokis has a conversation with the Nefesh Bahamis and tries to change the Nefesh Bahamis. And if he's successful, he wins the war.
It says in this Perek Tanya that at the end of the day, this is what the Nefesh Be'emet actually wants him to be getting over her.
Yes.
Because this is it's doing Hashem's job,
and
make it hard, and from the hardness that to overcome it, then it's
much greater by the Eibishter when that happens.
Yeah.
Correct. But and it's a geschmack point, but we're going to leave it on the side for now. So that's one way of doing it. And that's milamata lamayla, where the nefesh elokis lowers itself to the level of the nefesh habahamis. Then you have the other way of doing it. The other way of doing it is milamayla lamata. What's pshat milamayla lamata? The nefesh elokis doesn't bother getting into a conversation with the nefesh habahamis. Instead, the nefesh elokis reveals itself. In other words, the nefesh elokis awakens its love to the Eibishter, which the nefesh elokis naturally has, and reveals it, so to speak, to the nefesh habahamis. In other words, the nefesh habahamis suddenly feels this force of the nefesh elokis. This can happen by learning Torah. This can happen by revealing the makif in the nefesh. I'm not a person with experience in doing this, so it's a little hard for me to describe to you exactly the mechanism of how it works. But conceptually, there's this idea where a person reveals his nefesh elokis. His nefesh elokis is full of a passionate, burning, forceful love to the Eibishter. And the nefesh elokis brings it to the fore of his consciousness, and now suddenly the nefesh habahamis feels it and is aware of it. It doesn't feel the love. In other words, it doesn't love the Eibishter, but it feels the force and the overwhelming power of the nefesh elokis' love to the Eibishter. And when it feels that overwhelming love that the nefesh elokis has to the Eibishter, it gives up and it gives in. In the face of greatness, in the face of a power that's much greater than it, it just stops being itself. And it follows the lead of the nefesh elokis. Okay, and that's milamayla lamata. And over here, you don't have to get into a whole long battle. Over here, you don't have to get into a whole long fight, because you don't take the nefesh habahamis on what it's interested in into consideration. You're not trying to explain it to anything. You're not trying to convince it. You're just saying, look, I'm much stronger than you. I'm a nefesh elokis. I love the Eibishter literally without any end. And there's no room for you, nefesh habahamis. You have no place in my existence. You have no place in my life. And I have no interest in you. And when the nefesh habahamis feels it, so it just gives in and gives up. Okay, so those are the two ways. And what the Rebbe is trying to understand in this Maimer is that from the pasuk of Podoh Bishalom, the Rebbe teaches the word based on what the Mittler Rebbe says, that Bishalom means Beis Shalom. There's two types of peace. That you can have peace when you go by revealing the overwhelming force of the nefesh elokis, and you could also have peace when you go and work with the nefesh habahamis at its level. And that's what's bothering the Rebbe. How could you have peace if you're lowering yourself to the level of the nefesh habahamis, where now you have to talk to it on its own terms? You have to convince it why, even though it sees the world and the world exists to it, and it's very important for it to have all of the conveniences of this world and the other things in this world, that still, even with all that, it should still love the Eibishter. That's not a peaceful situation. That's a constant tug of war, because the nefesh habahamis is always going in his direction, and at every moment he wants to do what he wants to do. So how could you call this a peaceful situation? Okay, that's the very short, not so short synopsis of where we're holding in the Maimer. Okay, and with that, we're going to now begin Eis Hey.
Not only peaceful situation, it's also dangerous.
It's dangerous.
Depending what the personality is.
It's very dangerous. It's just like, and that's one of the other meanings in the fact that it's called war. The pasuk calls it mikravli, that it's war, and just like in war, you could win the battle, but you could also, a person could also get injured or even worse than injured. So when the nefesh elokis lowers itself to the level of the nefesh habahamis, the nefesh elokis is taking a tremendous risk, because whenever the nefesh habahamis does an avera, he drags the nefesh elokis with him, because the nefesh elokis is enclosed in him, and he lowered himself to his level. So it's taka a situation of war and a situation of danger, and it's not peace. So I was asking, how can we call this peace? How can we say that there's Beis Shalom, that they're both peaceful situations? What are they not? One is peaceful when you overwhelm him with like a nuclear bomb, and you just say, I'm going to obliterate you, I'm not interested in you. That you taka have peace. But when you talk to him and try to convince him and listen to him and reason with him, over there's no peace. Okay, so now we're going to go on a bit of a long beer, and then we'll get back to the answer. And we're holding Isay on page Lamed in the Maimon. V'inyan hu the B'shalim Shanasa Isay on page Lamed. Okay. V'inyan hu, and you have to turn the pages backwards. Yeah, in the copies, they're put together backwards. V'inyan hu the B'shalim Shanasa al dehabiru shnei fanim. So let's take apart now what type of shalom, that the different ways of shalom that exist. And he says that there are two ways. There's one way where you have shalom, like we just mentioned before, shnis batel hamanagid, that the opposition becomes batel. In other words, he gives up and gives in. And as we mentioned before, this way is primarily when you come from above and you affect him with your overwhelming force. Why? Because if it goes the other way, if you try to go milamata lamayla, that the mevarer, that the one who's trying to refine the other one, lowers himself and encloses himself and into the world of the one that he's working with and with the one that he's refining, and he deals with him and he works with him to try to bring about that he should agree to be refined. It's not pshat that you got rid of and negated the person that you're working with. Rather, instead, he makes a decision that he's now going to behave in a good and an appropriate way. And what's the problem with that? And since even after you succeeded in refining him, what is he? He is still a tachtin. He is still a lowly type of entity. The tachtin velim hafachim, which is the complete opposite of a higher type of entity. Therefore, even after he's refined, it's shaykh that he should oppose the alien, the one who's working with him. Yeah, let's try maybe to use a little bit of a muscle to try to help bring out the ideas in a visual way, a little more visually. So if you picture that you have a mashpia and a bacher that he's working with, or a person that he's working with, there could be two types of mashpiyim. There could be two styles of mashpiyim. There could be a mashpia who's so on fire, and he's so dynamic and so charismatic, and he's living so much with the Rebbe and with the Anyanim and Chassidus and with Mivtzayim and with Mashiach. He's on fire, and his head is bechlal. He's full of stories of Chassidim, all of the great Chassidim from the beginning of time till this day. He always has an exciting word. He's always supercharged. Today is Sunday of Parshas Vayechi. Vayechi is this. He's on fire, and like this, the bachrim that are around him are influenced by his excitement. Okay. So what happens over here? When the bachrim are under his influence, in other words, when they're in his shir, when they're in his yeshiva, and they're fabringing with him on a regular basis, so the bachrim are very unlikely to get involved in things that are the opposite of Chassidishkeit. Why? Because he's such a dynamic force, and he's so powerful, and he's so he fills in the entire space with his excitement, and he's a good and wonderful and a good person, and he just schleps them along with him. Then there's a different type of mashpia. He's not the excited type. He's not the charismatic type. He's not necessarily outwardly inspired. He's more thoughtful, and he works with the bacher, and he sits with the bacher one-on-one individually, and he hears the bacher. Where are you? What are you interested in? What are you struggling with? What are your successes? What are your challenges? And he tries to point him in the right direction. Learn this sechel, learn this maimer, and he tries to help him slowly but surely to elevate himself and to lift himself and to refine himself. That he shouldn't just grow up as he's going through his teenage years. He shouldn't just grow up like a nefesh ba'amis, like an animalistic soul grows up, like a person grows up. But instead, he should work on himself and change himself and slowly get somewhere. This person, this Bacher, the Bachrim that this Mashpia, the second Mashpia is working with, are much more at risk of getting into trouble during their teenage years. Why? Because the Mashpia isn't completely knocking them out. He's not overwhelming them. Instead, he's letting their personalities exist. He's letting their character exist. He's leaving space for their challenges. And he's just staying there with them, and he's helping them work through it. The other Mashpia, there are no challenges. The Bachrim are on fire. They're living like on a high, on a spiritual high. So they're not at risk. Everything is good. Where do you see the difference, though? And we're going to get into all of this soon. Where do you see the difference, though? What happens when the Bacher leaves yeshiva? When the Bacher leaves yeshiva, now suddenly the situation is the opposite. The Bacher, who was only a Chassidish Bacher and didn't go through any challenges or struggles, because the Mashpia was so dynamic, so charismatic, and so inspired, the moment he leaves yeshiva, and now his challenges start making themselves known to him, suddenly he's knocked off balance, and he doesn't have to deal with it. And now he's in trouble. Whereas the Bacher, there was always space left for him to grow and to work with his nature that the Eibishter benched him with and the Eibishter gave him to work with in this world, when he leaves yeshiva, he's exactly where he was before. He doesn't go down. But what's the chesaron? That he's more, so to speak, you might quote, more on a balabatisha level. He's more on a reasonable level. He's not that fire, that burning fire of just Mrs. Nefesh and Koch and excitement. So that's the chesaron. So in other words, there's a maila and there's a chesaron in each approach. When you go mila maila lamata, the maila is that the mata, the bacher, his challenges and everything, they just cease to exist. In the face of the excitement of the mashpia, they cease to exist. But the bacher was never changed. He's only like that because of his proximity to the mashpia. He was never changed. And the problem is that later on, when he's out on his own and he's no longer next to his mashpia, either he'll continue with the fire of the mashpia, but it's a big if. He might not. Becoming suddenly aware of his own challenges in his own space, in his own personality, in his own character, he suddenly might find himself stooping very low. The other bacher was always dealing with his challenges. To him, the world was always very real. And he was always at a certain risk, more than the other bacher, to get caught up in the challenges of the Nefesh Bahamis. But the maila is that when he leaves yeshiva, he goes exactly straight. The chesaron is that he'll never be excited. That holy passion, that inspirational passion is missing from him. So you need both. You need both. And the question is, how do you have both? Yeah. Each one has its unique quality. Each one has its unique quality. So keep and we're going to get to it later in the Maimon. Seemingly, you can't have both. You have to pick your lane. If you're going to try to be inspirational, so then we just excite away your own personality and your own character and your own reality. And if you try to give room and place to your own personality and to your own character and to your own challenges, then you're not going to be inspired. So you can't have this one and the other. So let's see. So keeping that muscle in mind, let's try to go through this. So this idea of milamata l'mayla and avedas ha'adam, let's look at it now. When the nefesh elikis refines the nefesh bahamis by lowering itself to the level of having conversations and explaining things to the nefesh bahamis, the Nefesh Elokis lowers itself to a level where he can speak in the language of the Nefesh Bahamis, where also the Nefesh Bahamis can understand that it should love the Eibishter. In other words, the Nefesh Elokis sees the Eibishter in a way that the Nefesh Bahamis will never ever see. To the Nefesh Elokis, the certainty and the reality of the Eibishter is clear in front of his eyes, like something that me and you look at right in front of us. There's no need for convincing us. There's no way to convince us out of it. It's true to us at the deepest level. The Nefesh Elokis's relationship to the Eibishter is at that level, because that's in its existence. Only Eibishter exists, and it sees the Eibishter constantly. What does the Nefesh Elokis do? It lowers itself to now start thinking of the Eibishter in a much lower way, in a way where, why do I love the Eibishter? Because I understand the Eibishter, because I understand his greatness, because I'm applying my own human thoughts to the Eibishter, and over there I understand why I should love him. L'gabe the Nefesh Elokis, it lowered itself now tremendously, many levels lower than the place of the Nefesh Elokis itself, and it lowers itself in order so that the Nefesh Bahamis can also love the Eibishter. Okay, the Zesh Nefesh Bahamis Eves Savaya, and this that the Nefesh Bahamis now starts loving the Eibishter.
I turn it into Laman.
So you got to go backwards.
Oh.
How do you go backwards? That's the question, right? Some people it's hard to go backwards. I think you got to go this way. Here's Lamed Vav. We figured out how to go backwards.
Okay. All right.
I have a friend who really knows how to look at things from many different angles. So he was trying to explain to me an example of somebody going backwards. He was trying to tell me, why do you have to go backwards? So he says, it's like somebody driving on Empire Boulevard, and he's trying to go, this way. But instead of driving this way, he's driving in the other lane in reverse. When you could just get in the lane, it's a two-way street. You could just get in the lane and go the right way. So some people can go backwards, some people can't go backwards. So we have like this. This that now suddenly we have a situation with an Nefesh Bahamis loves the Eibishter, Hagam shebetiva hinim shachas limyonim gashmim, even though by nature the Nefesh Bahamis is attracted to and is interested in physical things. What happened over here is not that the Nefesh Bahamis lost its own character and its own existence. The opposite is true. What happens over here is that the intellect, the capacity of understanding that the Nefesh Bahamis has, brought it to the conclusion that it should love the Eibishter. And since what's happening over here? This, that the Nefesh Bahamis loves the Eibishter. Why does it now suddenly love the Eibishter? And why does it agree that it should love the Eibishter? Again, the Nefesh Bahamis can't see the Eibishter. The Nefesh Bahamis has no awareness of the Eibishter. Leave it to its own devices. It's going to understand the donut, and in the best case, maybe it's going to understand physics in its highest form. Where is it suddenly gaining this awareness of something that's above and beyond this world? It's only because the Nefesh Elokis taught it about the Eibishter. So it's not its own seichel. It's mitzad the Nefesh Elokis, which lowered itself to be able to explain things also to the Nefesh Bahamis. Aval Nefesh Bahamis mitzad atzma, and here's the main point: but the Nefesh Bahamis on its own, without the influence, remove the influence of the Nefesh Elokis. What is the Nefesh Bahamis itself? It's something that's interested in gashmistic things. So, that when the Nefesh Bahamis refines the Nefesh Elokis, when the Nefesh Elokis refines the Nefesh Bahamis through contemplating the greatness of the Eibishter, it's only that it forces the Nefesh Bahamis into it. So even now, when the Nefesh Bahamis has a love to the Eibishter, Nishar behelem ha'isnagdus shel Nefesh Elokis ela she'isnagdus shel ein haba b'poel. So behelem, in a concealed way, its opposition and its fight against the Nefesh Elokis is still there. It's just that it's not acting on it. In other words, the Nefesh Bahamis remains the Nefesh Bahamis. We didn't remove its existence. We didn't disrupt its nature. We simply convinced it to do something that's against its nature. And that's why it's called iskafia. The nature of the Nefesh Bahamis was and remains to be interested in Gashmias and at the expense of being interested in Elikos. If it ever has a choice between being Memalataiva, enjoying itself, or the need to listen and follow what the Eibishter says in its state, its choice is always one, do what you want. That's always what it chooses. And if Bahamis could properly be termed a man who followed his heart. which is not good. In America, it's a very big compliment. You put it on a people, on a person's gravestone. Harry was a man who followed his heart. It's a big mile. What if Harry's heart told him to steal? What if Harry's heart told him to be narcissistic? What's so good about following your heart? So Al Capone, the Nefesh Ba'amis, is a man who follows his heart, and therefore he'll always end up in trouble, even when he's listening to the Nefesh Elokis, even at the time that the Nefesh Elokis convinced him. But since the Nefesh Ba'amis was left intact, so his natural instinct and inclination is always to go against it. So that's the problem. And therefore, if you want to finish off and have the menagid give in and give up and lose itself, this dafka happens when you refine it with an overwhelming force coming from above. First, we're talking in general terms. Through this, that the higher thing, the higher entity, reveals to the lower entity a tremendous light which is much greater than it can handle. He loses his existence. And now let's talk more specifically about how does this work in a person's serving the Eibishter? The Nefesh Abamis feels the love of the Nefesh Elokis. And this love is l'mayla mitam v'das. In other words, it's higher than anything that the Nefesh Abamis has in its arsenal. And this love of the Nefesh Elokis is in general, for the major part, it is a love which is greater than what can be contained by the heart, by the Nefesh Abamis which resides in the heart. So the Nefesh Abamis loses its nature, loses its character, loses its existence. And through losing itself, it actually becomes transformed to good. And this is the madrega of Ishapka that's higher than Iskafia. So we're saying, in order to avoid all of the pitfalls, all of the problems of working with the Nefesh Abamis on its own level, which in a nutshell can be stated as that the Nefesh Abamis maintains its own nature, its own character, and its own harmful tendencies. So what does the person have to do? The person has to reveal a higher force from his Nefesh Elokis. And when the Nefesh Abamis feels it, it's like it gets burnt by it. It can't handle the love that the Nefesh Elokis has, and therefore the Nefesh Abamis loses itself.
It happens when you're going through and you really heavy challenges, then you become stronger towards that. You have a challenge that's very difficult for you, and B'ezrat Hashem, you were able to overcome it. You all of a sudden open up to that, pulling him down and getting control over what you were just saying.
What you're saying is
in place.
That you see the nature of a person when he's challenged, that the challenge calls out within him powers that he can't usually access, that he can't usually, make part of his life. And it's specifically when he's challenged by something, and unfortunately, the greater the challenge, the more true it is, that the person says, listen, let's either sink or find a way to deal with this, that suddenly he finds within him, and he reveals within him powers that he was never able to reveal and bring out from before. And you're saying that this is a similar concept. It's a similar idea to the thought that when the Nefesh, and with this he overcomes, and with this he can actually succeed and continue with a good and happy and successful life, despite the challenges.
Right.
And you're saying that this is a similar concept, that when the Nefesh Elokis reveals itself, so the overwhelming force of the Nefesh Elokis now destroys the challenge of the Nefesh Abamis. It's not the same idea, but it's a similar concept, and it's a similar mechanism. It's a similar idea.
Okay.
So I think it would take longer to think about it, but it's definitely a similar idea. I don't know if it's the same idea. So that's the mile of going b'derech milamayla lamata. What's the mile of going b'derech milamata lamayla? Why should we want to go b'derech milamata lamayla? The eidefin b'shalim. There's another way of peace. Shanas alidei habiru, which happens by refining, which is accomplished when you refine something. There's another way of peace, that the side that initially was an enemy now becomes a friend. And the lashon of the pasuk, that even his enemies will make peace with him. And there's a certain mila, there's a certain greatness in the fact that even the enemy has to admit to him and has to make peace with him. This mila happens primarily when you go b'derech milamata l'mayla. Why? When the birur happens in the eifin of milamayla lamata, what happened over here? It's pshat that we have a nefesh ba'amis, and the nefesh ba'amis so agrees to the nefesh lekis. That's not pshat. Pshat is that there is no more oivav. The enemy was destroyed, was vanquished, was annihilated. There is no enemy. So you don't have the mile of being able to look and see the greatness of saying that even those who hated him had to admit and say, no, you're the better one, you're the greater one, you're the one that we're going to listen to, you had it right all along, you're right and we're wrong. You don't have that mile. What you have is, you got rid of him. So for this mile, you have to go to dafka milamata l'mile, where you allow the other side to maintain his existence. You say, in other words, this world could exist. We don't have to be mevatel this world. And even when with this world existing, with all of the challenges and all of the taivas of this world, we could still love the Eibishter. That's a situation of Eiv of Yashli Mitay. And that's a very big mile. And that you can't have if you go milamayla lamata, because over there you're just getting rid of the mata. If you go milamayla lamata, all you're doing is you're annihilating the existence and the character and the nature of the tachtin. You don't cause a change in the tachtin the way he exists. Even though by revealing the averab of the nefesh bahamis. So the nefesh bahamis now is transformed into good. Its transformation was not mitzad the nefesh bahamis. It was transformed because it lost itself. When can you truly say that my enemies also made peace with me and agreed to me and conceded to me? Not conceded. Hu b'habirur b'derech milamata l'mayla. Is dafka when you're mevarer milamata l'mayla. That the nefesh bahamis loves the Eibishter is because that's what the seichel of the nefesh bahamis tells it to do. Taka because the nefesh is convinced it, but now the nefesh bahamis, the seichel, understands that. So that's the mila and going milamata l'mayla. Okay.
We learned this week in the Torah the same thing.
Malak Almin, right? I was thinking about that. I didn't finish knowing the first Maimer in Torah. I didn't finish learning it, but I was thinking that it might be a similar concept where
and even the coming week again repeats the same thing about the
Malak Almin is more b'derech milamata l'mayla, you're saying, and then
and through the world, through
the lens of the world,
and the mile of the doing it through the world. That's the whole point of Dilim Tachlenim. If not, I'm saying, because if it's going to be everything a mile of matter, then why does he need us?
There's nothing. Yeah.
But obviously, that's a much higher level.
The birit. So wait till we see what Deb is going to say over here. You have a mile, so you have to. You can't have this yet. You have to choose which one. And you want both. Okay, I'm gonna pick up this the pace now. We're gonna have a very geschmack kata soon. We really have to finish this mimer next week, so we're gonna go a little faster. And that's now the meaning of two types of peace, right? Beis Shalom, sign the pasuk of Shavti B'Shalom, which is bitter Hanitzaitis, and sign the pasuk of Podoh B'Shalom, which is the Mulchama between the Nefesh Lakis and the Nefesh Bahamis. Which in both cases you have a Shalom Milamayla Lamata V'Shalom Milamata Lamayla. That we say like this: Shabiru the Nefesh Bahamis Podoh B'Shalom Nafshi V'Chein Biru Hanitzaitis Shebeilam Shavti B'Shalom Leisav Yitzadek Lias V'Shnei Fanim. You dafka have to have both ways. That through this you end up having both milas, both advantages that are found in shalom. Side the mila that the tachtin becomes bottle, and side the mila of gam eviv yashlemita that even the enemy gives in to you, which is already a concept that's hard to wrap your head around. How could you have both? So you could try to answer that sometimes you have to do it like this, and sometimes you have to do it like that, right? But the Rebbe says no. That because the Rebbe goes even further, and the Rebbe makes a statement that you can't say that sometimes you're milamayla lamata and sometimes you're milamata lamayla. Because see what the Rebbe says now. The ultimate level of shalom, shalom gam lashon shleimus, shalom also from the lashon of wholeness and completeness. Shalom shebekol echad tishnei fanim kolel shtei hamaylis. That the peace that's in each oifen includes in it both milas. To mean, even when you go milamata lamayla and you beferish lower yourself to the level of the nefesh bahamis and don't destroy it and let the nefesh bahamis remain as it is, you also have the mile of his hapcha. And even when you come at it from above, milamayla lamata, you still have the biru, the maila that the tachtin mitzad its inyan also became refined. And how does this work? We'll have to wait for much later in the Maimed. And this is the taich of the pasuk Podoh B'Shalom Nashim Mikravli Shagama in the Podoh B'Shalom. That also the in of P'tiyah B'Shalom Shu B'derech Klal P'tiyah Nefesh L'Kis Meros Nefesh B'Amsal Degili Oir, which B'derech Klal B'Shalom means that we are going milamayla lamata, we are revealing a tremendous light that the Nefesh L'Kis reveals and shines on the Nefesh Bahamis, thereby destroying the Nefesh Bahamis. Nevertheless, Tiyah by Hamayla de Mikrovli. In this same pasuk, he continues that it's Mikrovli should also have the mile of Krov Melash and Kiruv, Habiru the Nefesh Bahamis Atzma, that you could also refine the Nefesh Bahamis itself. In other words, the Nefesh Bahamis at its own level as it is, without destroying it, that you make it love the Eibishter. While there's the Li'idoch, and so to the other way around, Shagam Habir Shubederech Krov Melchami, both in the Podoh B'Shalom, is Habcha. That also, when you go Milamata L'Mayla, that you should also have the Mayla of his Habcha. So L'chura, it's a nice idea, it's a nice concept, it's a nice thought, but how could you ever do such a thing? So Mamshich B'Hakasov Ki B'Rabim Hoyu Imodi. The pasuk continues, why? Ki B'Rabim Hoyu Imodi Hu Tam Ki Al Podoh B'Shalom Nashim Mikrovli. B'Rabim Hoyu Imodi is a reason why I could have this idea, the way the Rebbe teaches Podoh B'Shalom Nashim Mikrovli, which is you have both milas, side the mila of Shalom, in other words, milamayla lamata, and side the mila of Krov, which is milamata lamayla, and you have them both at the same time. Why? Because through this, that a person contemplates and thinks at length and in depth about his yichida, about his connection to the Eibishter, about this space within him that's one with the Eibishter. Which mitzad his awareness and his consciousness of his level of yichida, he's awakened and he brings about within himself a bittul to the Eibishter. And to be clear, the Rebbe says, "Shegam lifnei ha'aveda de Podoh B'Shalom Nashim Mikrovli v'tzarech adayin lifnei snafshe l'kis me'am l'chamis nefesh ba'amis." Even before he reached these high madregas of Podoh B'Shalom Nashim Mikrovli, and he still finds himself in a situation where he needs redemption. In other words, he's still a person who's very challenged, like a human being in our generation, like the normal people that we all know around us. Even such a person, by thinking about his yichida and by reminding himself, constantly reminding himself, and thinking about it for a meshech zman, that he has within him this connection to the Eibishter that's above and beyond any breaking point, that's above and beyond any temptation that's above and beyond any reason, any transient situation and condition. It is something that is rock solid, that is constant, that is true, that goes to his core and that connects to Kivyachol, the core of the Eibishter. So when the person thinks about this and makes himself aware of this, it gives him, it grants him this bittul klali, a general bittul telikus, which is derived from the yechida within his soul, and al yadei zeh, once he's already in this state, so now habiru de nefesh habamis hi ba'ifin de Podoh b'shalom nafshi mikrovli, so b'kol echad shnei fani habiru yeshlem shtei hamailis, that in each one of the two ways of birur you have both milas. Wow, maybe it's 8 lines this is, and very hard to decipher. 6 lines, this paragraph, and very hard to take apart. What he says over here is like this. First of all, your answer in a word is going to be yechida or bittul. They're one and the same. So we have a question over here. How could you have both milas? Seemingly you have to pick a lane. Either you're revealing the tremendous light of the Nefesh Elokis and annihilating the Nefesh Bahamis, or you're letting the Nefesh Bahamis exist and working with him on his level. And in each case, you'll have the advantage and disadvantage. So he says like this, you only have to pick a lane if you didn't reach the Madega of Bittul. And which Madega of Bittul? The Madega of Bittul that comes from Yechida. Once you arrived at this place of Gili HaYechida and the Bittul that comes from it, now it's a whole other story. And like he says in Ara 36, Kedil Kaman, we'll see in Sif Tes exactly the mechanism, how it works. But this is the first thing, that when you lift yourself up to a new dimension, suddenly you're in a different reality. Suddenly it becomes a false choice. You no longer have to choose to go right or left. You could go right or left at the same time because you're in a higher space than right or left.
By knowing better, but at that
by telling yourself and by reminding yourself that there's much more to me. I go a lot deeper than what it appears to be. And this place that I'm saying there's much more to me and I go a lot deeper, that's the place of Yechida. In other words, by saying like this, yes, I wake up every morning and I have thoughts. Maybe as soon as I wake up, I say, and I think to myself, okay, today I'm going to serve the Eibishter. And before I know it, I get out of bed and I stub my toe in something, and a nivel peh, a curse comes flying out of my mouth. Just a second ago, you were saying, and now over here you're cursing, you're angry. What happened over here? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You're not sure. This never happens to you, you're saying.
No. I'm saying that very possible.
It's very possible. You see, you know,
it jumps from one to the other.
It jumps from one to the other.
But then, if you have the initial idea, it's easier to calm it down. Hey, wait a minute. Calm down. That's all. We know better. I know better.
Very good. So what you're saying is that there's these two forces. It's going this way and it's going that way. And that's exactly where people like us are. That's our level. But it can't be only that, because if we just go with that, then we have to pick a lane. Then we can never have the advantage of completely transforming the Nefesh Bahamis.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we want to have that advantage, we can never have the advantage of working with the Nefesh Bahamis on its level and making the human being himself be somebody who loves the Eibishter. In other words, we're faced with a choice of either disconnecting from this world and not allowing ourselves not to go on vacation, not to drive a nice car, not to drive a car at all, to sleep on the floor, not to sleep on a comfortable mattress, to wear uncomfortable clothing. Sackcloth and ashes is even better. Bread and stale bread, old bread and salt, because that's the only way that we could shift ourselves all the way over to this holier experience, to this holier life, where I'm never in this space of chas v'shalom uttering a curse word, of becoming angry. I'm always in a holy state. Or I could go the other way and say, no, you know what? I'm not going to be holy. I'm going to be a person of this world. I'm going to be a human being who proves that while I live in this world and fully take part of this world. I go out to work, and I go on vacation, and I sleep on a bed with a comfortable mattress, and I drive a nice car, and I have nice clothing. And while I'm doing all of these things, I'm serving the Eibishter also. And I'm showing that none of these things are a contradiction to serving the Eibishter. But if you do that, then you're always at risk of succumbing to the taivas of this world. It says the Hasidim were never into the mitzvahs that the body gets pleasure from. Because the mitzvahs that the body gets pleasure from, it starts off, you're doing it because it's a mitzvah, but with time, you can get caught up into it. Yeah, that's one of the reasons Hasidim don't sleep on Shabbos, and we're not so mahader in I'm not going to say we're not so mahader, but we're not so mahader in the foods of Shabbos. Yeah, at least traditionally not. Or at least even if we are mahader in the foods of Shabbos, we're doing it because, listen, on Monday I go to a restaurant, and when I go out with my friends, I party as if it's a daf design. So on Shabbos, I'm also going to have nice food. But we're not doing it the way other Hasidim do it, where they pasha do it as an aveda. Yeah, I was once, or my brother-in-law was once in a bakery over there in Fiakovs in the Catskills, and he's standing in line over there. He wants to buy his challah, and there's a Polish guy over there by the bakery. He tells the guy, "Give me that kokos cake of the Zolrin in Lukovich Shabbos." Yeah, he wanted the chocolate to be dripping Lukovich Shabbos Kodesh, and this is a tradition. He didn't make this up. It's a tradition by them and that's the whole idea of a tish. And it's not the whole idea of a tish, what I'm saying, but they put the food down, good food, because it's a pashta halacha. Kabdeu v'angehu, by good food. And the Chassidim were never into it because there's a risk. The Lubavitcher Chassidim were never into it because there's a risk over here.
Also, they didn't have it.
Also, they didn't have
it. In Hungary, they had it.
Over Al Kapanim, be it as it may. Be it as it may.
He made sure to have it.
Be it as it may, the point is, Rami, getting back to what you were saying, that yes, we find ourselves in this space of I lose my composure for a moment and I get angry, and right away I remind myself, whoa, wait a second, the Eibishter orchestrated this whole thing. If he did it, it's a good thing. And certainly I can't get angry. Maybe I can't agree that it's a good thing yet. Maybe I'll get there later. But for a starter, I know I can't get angry. The Eibishter is involved in this, etc., etc. This is a place where you still have this duality. You're pulling in one direction and another direction. You're going back and forth. And therefore, you have to pick a lane. Go this way or go that way. What the Rebbe is saying over here is something higher. That you can actually reach a space where you don't have to be in this constant struggle and this constant tug of war and constant, success, failure, up and down. And David says that this is through digging deeper into yourself and saying there's a madrega of Yechida, acknowledging and recognizing why is there this dual system. It's because I'm only connecting to a lower level of my consciousness where there isn't the oneness of Hashem. In other words, where I say the Nefesh Elokis has to be in one corner, the Nefesh Bahamis has to be in another corner, and they have to fight each other. But the truth of the matter is that if I can connect to someplace higher, and I could say, it's not about me, not my Nefesh Elokis, and not my Nefesh Bahamis. So if it's not about me, my Nefesh Elokis, or my Nefesh Bahamis, it's about the Eibishter. I'm connecting completely and wholly to the Eibishter. So now suddenly they could all lose their definitions. I don't have to be this, I don't have to be that. I can enter into a third space where it's all one. And that's the idea of the Bittul of Yechida.
How do you feel connected to Kibbutz Abnoi?
That he doesn't explain in this Maimer. It's explained in the Mitzvah Rebbe's Maimer B'Pashtus. So when you can enter this space, so then you suddenly have the milas of both. And to get to that, the Rebbe is going to go in a long sidetrack, and this we're going to go through 7 minutes on the clock. We're going to go through Eis Zayin, which is a long Eis, but a very, very geschmack Eis. So let's see if we could stick together with it. The middle Rebbe said a Maimer granted by the Rebbe, it was either by the Rebbe's Chasna or Pashas, by the Rebbe's Sheva Brachas. Shamari b'Shabbos Pashas, no Shabbos, so it was Sheva Brachas. Shabbos Pashas v'Yetzi Topish Meites was either Sheva Brachas or was the Shabbos Ufrufnish. Yeah, but Vayetzi it may very well have been the Shabbos. Okay, whatever. But either way, it was connected to the Rebbe's Chasna. They said in Topish Meites, Shebekunst Dushay Chasna, that Targum ala Pasuk v'Chol Benayichu. Taish the pasuk first. Yeah, and all of your sons are students of the Eibishter, and they bring a lot of peace. So he says like this: all of your children study the Torah of the Eibishter, and great will be the peace of your sons. The Fidik Rebbe is Medaik and Mevayer in this lashon of the Targum. This that the Targum says that they study the Torah of Havaya. Why does he have to say that? And even though that's taka the lashon pasuk like the Rebbe says in Order 40, but still he didn't have to say it that way. Who shalim the Torah shalem who ba'ifin shenigas etzle shatera he Torah savaya. That these Banayich are Limudei Havaya, they are learning Torah in a way that's it felt in them that this Torah that they're learning is the Eibishter's Torah. Umeisif Bahamayim and the Pirush Olfin Ba'iraisa Havaya, who the diuk and the understanding of that they study the Torah of Havaya, to Hagam Shlim the Torah Ulpina, who Shemevin Umasik Torah Besich Loi, Seichel Enushi, Mikamakim Gamba Halimut Seichel Shaloi, Nigash HaTorah Torah Savaya. Even in his learning of with his own seichel, he still feels in that it's Torah Savaya, often by Raisa da Havaya. The Rebbe has a hadin in the middle of learning, where the Rebbe says that the L'chor of the Sefer Halachos of the Rambam goes from the lowest madrega, and slowly but surely you reach until the end, till Hilchos Malachim U'Chamasem U'Melech HaMashiach, until you reach to the highest madrega. The Rebbe says that Nekoda over there. That's why early when the Rambam is talking about Hilchos Tshuva, he describes a much lower level than in the end of his Sefer in Yemei Mashiach. In Hilchos Tshuva, he describes a lower level in Yemei Mashiach than he describes in the end of his Sefer, because the Rebbe says that the Seder of the Rambam, the Pashtus, is that as you're learning more halachas, and not just learning them, but implementing them in your life, so you reach higher levels. So I was thinking to myself, based on that, we just started now Sefer Nezikin. What are the final Sfarim? Yeah. If you go by the standard view, what would you think, Epis? You know, the final Sefer should be Epis, Chleis was Taris, Maisa Akarbonis, Mikdash.
We just finished with
we just finished that, and where are we going from that? We're ascending to Hilchos Nezikin. Gneva, Gzela, and Mishpatim Shevim, Zakin Mamre. Mamish towards the end, you have over there the halachas of the Zakin Mamre. And so in these halachas, it's much harder to think about Torah Savaya. The Rambam finishes Sefer Torah. What does he finish over there? There's a dover barer v'golim yudul lakol, that the whole end of Torah is chukim, because nothing changes in the person's body physically when he goes into the mikveh and goes out of the mikveh. So it's clear that it's okay. So that seems to be holy and spiritual. And then we ascend because we reached a higher level. Now we go into Nezikin. What's the pshat? That to learn Nezikin, and the halachas that say that if you stole something before Yush, you have to, if it's Be'ain, it goes back to the guy before Yush or after Yush, doesn't matter. If it's not Be'ain, then before, all these things. Even though you understand it, and you get into an argument with them, and you say, wait a second, state does A, why is this, how does this make sense? And finally you understand it, and you say, oh, now it makes sense. You don't for a second forget that this is the Eivishter's Torah. It's not just a system of laws. It's not just a way to adjudicate and to say, a shayr town where the guy couldn't expect that his shayr should do the damage, so we'll only be mechayiv him chatzi nezek, and it's a knas. It makes sense that it's a knas, because if he has to pay him for the damage, it's the full damage. Let's just say a half a damage. Where does that make sense? Say no, it's a vert of a knas. It's not a vert of damage. And now I understand the knas. It could be any number. It could be more. It could be less. It doesn't matter. And you understand all of these details, and it makes perfect sense to you in your human mind. And you say after 3 times. Now you say already, the guy should have already expected, and now he has different halachas. And the way things flip, and then there's Shusar Abim, you're potter on Nizke Shein V'Regel, because everybody's supposed to know that there's Shusar Abim, even though you're Chayiv Nezek Shalom, but in the Shusar Abim you're completely potter from it, because everybody knows that that's where a Shayr walks, and they shouldn't leave their things around over there, and if they do, then they agree to the risk that a Shayr might walk and destroy it. Mashenkein, the lesser punishment of Chatzi Nezek, you're chayiv in Rishus Rabim. Even though it's a lesser punishment for this, you're chayiv in Rishus Rabim. Why? Because people don't expect that the shayr should gore or should kick or should do things like that in the Rishus Rabim. It all makes perfect sense in your head. It's beautiful. And then suddenly, but not suddenly, and all through that, you remember it's Torah Savaya. When a Yid learns Torah like that he never forgets that's the Eibishter's Torah, Even his learning and even his human understanding is bebittel. In order that the study of Torah should be in this form, by first davening Avodas Atfilah, Kinyan Atfilahu, Haiskashas Vabitl Elikus, because the davening brings out the Haiskashas and the Bittul to Elikus. And through learning Torah in this way, Dafka, you have the great peace and a lot of peace of Talmidei Chachamim. In other words, that what happens, that the Talmidei Chachamim themselves, by learning Torah with the bittul and remembering that it's Torah Hashem, they have peace amongst themselves. And they also have peace in the world. Like we finish every day in davening before Aleinu, that the Talmidei Chachamim actually make a lot of peace also pashat in this physical world. Now, a very geschmacka is that there's a whole leading onto itself, really. And I don't understand why that brings it here, but it's pashat beautiful. From the continuation of the Maimer, it's understood that what if somebody learns Torah without this bittul telikos? Never mind that he doesn't bring peace into this world. He could yet bring to the opposite. He could bring to fights and to hepech hashalom. Why? So that's when a person is learning Torah, and the feeling by him that this Torah is not his chacham, it's not his Torah, it's not his greatness, it's the Eibishter's Torah. He starts feeling great about himself. Look at me. Do you know how many hours I put into learning? Do you know how many mesechtas I know by heart? Ask me a question in Shulchan Aruch, I'll show you. Do you know I have to say, you want to talk with me a Ketzos? You want to get with me a Pesach Veisvas into a Pnei Yeshua Tifen, no problem, I'm with you. I'll show you Chidushim. I'll compare different nischayos of the Gemara from the first pin to the old Kisveyad. Look at me. He's machzik tevel atzmi. Shlomet teira harbe. It's like he says in the others, the hepech of Eros and Mishnah, to not be machzik tevel atzmi. V'nasim mitzvahs yesh, and now he becomes egotistical. Shemachzik is atzmi li'ishamayli, considers himself to be a derheben a mensch, a very special and great person. V'adam choshev, and a very respected person. And if you have such a gentleman walking around, it's going to cause fights. Because of his greatness, listen to this beautiful analysis. What happens? His ego is so great that he feels that whatever the other person did, the other person tied his shoe, he sneezed, whatever he's doing it just to spite me, just to piss me off. Yeah. He walked into shul, somebody opened the window shade. Why did that guy open the window shade? He knows I don't like when the sun shines through the window shade. I want people looking through the window. He's purposely doing it. Because this guy is so egotistical to think that the other person wasn't thinking about him while he was opening the window shade. That's out of the question. His existence is so pervasive and pungent, spread out over the entire Beis Medrash, that there can't be that while he was opening the window shade, he wasn't thinking about me. And if he did it, he obviously was pissing me off. He's doing it to spite me. He left the sefer on the table. He doesn't even learn that sefer. What's he shaykhs the Talmud Bavli, the Talmud Yerushalmi? Even Talmud Bavli he doesn't know. The Yerushalmi he left on his table. He wanted to make me walk in front of everybody. He's jealous of me. He's jealous of me. Are they stupid? I mean, these things happen, by the way. Inside the person's narcissism, inside his ego, he's convinced that the entire world is about him. It's about him. And whatever you do, you reposition the Svarim Shach. You start Shachris a minute later or a minute earlier. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. You didn't come to him and ask him, could I do this? Should I do it? Is it a good idea? He's sure that you're doing it to spite him. And this is all why? Because he learned a lot of Torah. Right. It's because of no bit of I'm saying, but what brought him to this? Had he not opened a sefer in his life and had a job, he never would have been this despicable person. And how did it happen to him through learning Torah? Because, like you're saying, because he was doing it without bittul. He lost his awareness that this is the Eibishter's Torah. He thought that it's his Torah. There was a chassid who was a great man of wisdom in understanding Chassidus. In other words, we can't even begin to imagine what he was able to understand in Chassidus. Came to the Tzemach Tzedek and he complained, as when Tetif mean in Beis Medrash, they step on me in the Beis Medrash, they disrespect me. The honor had Tzemach Tzedek answered him to be sich mispashet über dem ganzen Beis Medrash is vu jener tret is also dir. You spread yourself out over the entire Beis Medrash, so wherever anybody tries to step, he ends up stepping on you. So we're telling him that you consider yourself to be the owner, so to speak, in Indian of the whole Beis Medrash, that it all belongs to you, that everything in it is all subservient to you, and therefore, no matter whatever anybody does in the Beis Medrash, he's stepping on you. And David goes very deep into this story. The deek in the story, that what was this person complaining that they step on me in the Beis Medrash? Even though the Beis Medrash is a mikdash ma'at. The Beis Medrash is supposed to be a home for the Eibishter. This is a place where the Eibishter is revealed. Even in such a place, he spread out his ego, he spread out his narcissism and his existence. And further, he's medayik in the maimer. This that he complained, this complaint that he made to the Tzemach Tzedek that they're stepping on him, was when he was at Yechidus with the Tzemach Tzedek. Dinin haYechidus uiskashas haYechidus shel zeh hanichnas liYechidus u'meYechidus labrish shelat nichnas. A Yechidus is that you connect your Yechidah to the Yechidah of the Rebbe that you're going to. Even at this elevated state, where he was now at the most refined state that he was able to exist in, even over there, he couldn't shake it. This feeling, this sincere feeling that he had, that he felt that people were stepping on him. In other words, the hope was that when he comes into Yechidus by the Tzemach Tzedek and he enters this space of transcendence, the space where he's out of his pettiness and small-mindedness, that suddenly he'll like see the light, and he'll see, actually nobody has anything against him. Everybody is nice to him. Everybody is happy for him and not jealous of him. He couldn't even see it there, even at this state of Yechidus. He couldn't tap into that. He couldn't feel it. Why? Because he has this lack of bittul, and with this lack of bittul, he's all lost. And that's where the Fidik brings all of the details of the story. No matter the fact that he was a big bardas and a big maskil, still bli aveda, without working on yourself. You can have these pashas of yeshus even in a mikdash ma'at. Even when you enter into yechidus, which from this we understand the absolute must, the absolute necessity of doing an aveda, of working on yourself and bringing yourself to a situation of bittul. The Tzemach Tzedek didn't give up on this yid, on this chassid. After answering him the problem, giving him the proper analysis of what's happening, that you're spreading yourself over the whole Beis Medrash, and therefore wherever everybody steps, no matter what they do, even if it's completely not trying to offend you, you feel like they're stepping on you. Tzemach Tzedek also gives him the solution. Peter Shakasav Yaziv Rasha Darkevish Oven Machshavais. I think we just had it in Haftarah that in Yeshaya, yeah, that the Rasha should leave his ways, and a man of evil or of not good should leave his thoughts. That the Tzemach Tzedek touched Oven Ein Bechela. What's Ein? Who Kech Be'ez? A person has to leave his strength, his strong-mindedness about himself. Upirs Ish Ein Hu Ish Chazak B'das Asmai is a person who's very strong about himself. Every single person must leave his ways. Just like a Rasha, if he wants to do tshuva, if he wants to improve himself, he has to stop doing his vicious. He will never be able to approach and start serving the Eibishter without first doing tshuva and leaving his bad ways. So too, it's an absolute necessity that a strong person, a person who's very much into himself and into his own existence, has to leave those machshavas. So there has to be bittul. The Rebbe over here adds another point which we don't have enough time to really bring out. The mashakasav machshavos lashon rabba who keep the hamachshava the yeshus yeshtam kama v'kama dargis in feelings and in thoughts of yeshus. There are many madregas. In other words, there's somebody who has blatant thoughts and feelings of yeshus, pashat the ekel dika miyasa type, and then there's sort of, so to speak, less harmful ones that might very much be in style today to say that is even healthy and important to have a certain amount of yeshus. a more subtle type, a more humanistic, a more well-mannered and sophisticated and cultured and civilized type of yeshus. So there's many different levels of yeshus, from the animalistic, brute, lowly type of yeshus, all the way to the more to the more subtle, refined levels of yeshus that you would think are good and are okay and maybe even necessary. That you have to leave all and every thought and idea of yeshus, of my own existence. Even a machshavas shebedakos, afilu shebedakos dedakos, even the most fine and subtle sense of existence of yeshus must be left. In other words, should be chased away, and a person should not have it. Is not good. That it says Pashat in Halacha that when they get to some fats that's on a piece of clothing, that it's chaytzitz. So how much fats has to be? What, I mean, if you're going to put it under a microscope, yeah, like some people these days put everything, check everything under microscopes. Yeah, I mean, you're going to find dirt on everything and chatzitzis on everything. So how much has to be on it? So halacha tells us also we don't have to wonder about it. So it says like this: when it comes to Talmidei Chachamim, even if the fats is only apparent and made a stain, mitzad echad, on one side of the garment, it's already considered a chatzitz, and you have to clean it before you're tevelit. V'shel bur of an amaretz, of an empty person, mishneit stadin. If it's only on one side, it's okay. It's not a chatzitza yet. Only if it's on both sides, then it's a chatzitza. In other words, that the more somebody is elevated and refined, the bigger a problem it is, even if there's only the smallest amount of fats, the smallest amount of dirt, of machshavas, of yeshus. There is a movement, which from this we could also understand when they get to spiritual fats and filth and grease. So when it comes to Talmid Chacham, even the slightest form, of yeshus causes a chatzitza, separates him from kedusha, and therefore it's an absolute necessity and requirement that he should leave any and all machshavas of yeshus, because without that it can't happen. At the beginning of all aveda, when a person wants to approach any service of the Eibishter, is bittul. If one wants to get close to the Eibishter, so if the person wants to do in the Aveda right now of elevating himself and lifting himself step after step during davening, and so if the person wants to go and get close to the Eibishter, which is by shining the tremendous light of Basagas, by revealing the light of Teda within his soul, and shining that light on his whole existence, in both cases, the prerequisite and the precondition and the beginning of it is first humility and holding yourself low. Not in an unhealthy way, but holding yourself low, to not think of yourself that you're the greatest thing. Over here, we're coming back now to our original problem, or at least our original observation. The Fidik Rebbe is making a point of talking about Sai, getting close to the Eibishter Milamata Lamaila and Sai Milamayla Lamata. In order to explain the Lashon of the Targum, that they learn the Teda of the Eibishter, Beiraisa the Havaya. In other words, that even when they're learning Teda, they're studying it in an Eifin of Alfin, an Eifin that they understand it in their human seichel, they still remember that it's Teda's Havaya. That was the point that the Fidik Rebbe was making in his Maimer. He should have only been talking about in this Maimer about coming close to the Eibishter through the study of Teda Milamayla Lamata. But instead, he's also saying the Eifim Milamata Lamayla. The Fidik Rebbe is hinting to us over here a deeper concept, that if the start of our service of the Eibishter, if before we do anything, we know that we have a bittul, Hashalim de Banoich, which this is the idea of Shloim Banoich because of bittul. So then, when you have a Talmid Chacham who's Eisik in Torah, which is L'chura Avart of Milamayla Lamata, still also there it's B'Shleimus Shekel Gamayla Shalom de Tefillah Milamata Lamayla, because it includes in it also the Maila of Shalom of Tefillah Milamata Lamayla, going from below to above. So over here, the Rebbe is bringing from the Fidik Rebbe's Maimer this idea that when you first have bittul, when you approach it with bittul, you'll also have in it the Maila of both ways, Milamayla Lamata Milamata Lamaila. And now in Ches, the Rebbe is going to start explaining it. I just want to go back to one part that I forgot to mention in that short paragraph, the 6-line paragraph, that he said over here that a person is misaided with bittul klali lelikus, in a general bittul telikus. This is something that I've asked a few people to explain it to me. I haven't yet. I don't understand it myself. What does a bittul klali mean? As we're saying, he's still a human. He's still a person who's not a big mama jag. He's still a person that's on a level of normal, regular people, but he has in him this bittul klali. Like the only thing I could sort of try to imagine in my mind is that like his hardness was broken. Before that he was completely, unaccepting of the Eibishter in his life, or at least to a certain degree. And now there's like a bittul klali. He didn't yet make himself over. He didn't yet transform himself, but this general idea that he's gonna, that he's gonna hand himself over to the Eibishter, that already exists for him, at least in a general way. Maybe we'll get back to it before we start discussing the answer of the Rebbe next week. All right, shkoyach.